Tim, you are the number one startup podcaster here in Japan. How were you able to do that? Excuse me, sir. Have you ever built a business in Japan before?
A few of them, but I'm a little busy right now.
I have a lot of people who want to start business. Can I ask you just a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
And today I'm here with.
Tim Romero, host of the Disrupting Japan podcast, where we talk about startups, innovation, and investment in Japan.
And Tim, how did you start a business here in Japan?
Well, the first time it was just out of necessity. I had to do something. I couldn't get a job somewhere else, so I started my first business doing e-commerce back in the '90s.
How was e-commerce back during that time?
It didn't exist. It was coding up bare metals, putting servers and racks in the back of the office, and educating everyone what e-commerce meant. It was a crazy time to be running startups.
How did you get into the startup scene here in Japan?
Well, like I said, my job had kind of dead ended. I had nothing else to do back in the '90s. It was really hard to get a job as a foreigner in Japan. Your options were limited. So starting this internet thing sounded kind of interesting. So I quit my job, started that first startup, sold that a few years, rinse, wash, repeat. Did that a few more times.
Can you walk us through the process?
I'd say the biggest problem that all founders have is finding a problem that people will pay you to solve. How are you adding value? So in this case, it was selling on the internet. No one knew how to do it. Rakuten was a brand new, tiny company at that point. Uh, Everyone wanted customization. That was a problem I could solve. So I called some of my friends who were bored at their jobs, and we all got together and started that first company.
How difficult is it to start a business here in Japan?
Starting it's easy. Growing it is hard.
Please explain.
Starting a business these days is easy. There's lots of people who help you out with the contracts, with the bank accounts. That's great. But actually getting customers, growing it, selling the same thing to a lot of different customers, that's hard. That's hard. You've got to be able to convince them that they can trade their big stack of money for your promises. And that's challenging.
How were you able to do it?
Consistency. If you deliver the first time, you get that person, you get that customer to talk to other customers, tell them that these guys deliver, they'll do what they say, and then you just keep doing that.
You mentioned that it was hard to get a job as a foreigner here in Japan. So, how did you start a business here?
Well, starting a business is well, that's hard too, but you've got more freedom. You can see opportunities, you can explore them. You're free to succeed or fail. You'll fail a lot more than you succeed. But that's always been open. And I think even in the United States, foreigners coming to the US are a huge part of the innovation there. That's true of Elon Musk, of Steve Jobs, of I mean, the leaders of Google and Microsoft are all immigrants to the US. So I think that's kind of a natural part of the creative startup ecosystem everywhere.
Do you think that if you were able to find a job in Japan when you first came here, that you would have ventured into startups?
That's a good question. Maybe not. Maybe not, but I don't know. I've always been kind of an impatient guy. I think I probably would have ended up in startups one way or another. You have to be bothered by something. You have to find a problem that just eats at you, and that you're willing to stay up nights trying to fix it, and you're willing to pitch 100 times and be told no until you get that first yes. So yeah, you've got to have that drive and that commitment, and it's not always a good thing, you know? It does have a lot of sleepless nights, just because things are never quite the way you want them.
How can people choose a business in Japan that they can focus all in on?
Find something you're Find a problem that you are the best at solving. Find something that you add unique value to. And I think that the trick to that is look at like 2 or 3 different skills you have. If you're really good at programming, well, there's millions of programmers out there. But if you're really good at programming and you have a deep knowledge of some other area, that's 2 points you can intersect. If you've got a third, if you've got 3 things you're really good at and you can combine them, there's a good chance you're the best in the world at those 3 things. So that's a really good place to start.
How can they do that?
Well, I mean, You know yourself, right? You know what you're good at. You know what special talents you have, and it's different for everybody. So think about those, write them down, figure out like, okay, what problems can I solve with these talents that I have that people will pay me to solve? And if you got a good answer to that, you've got a good startup in you.
A lot of people say follow your passion. Do you agree to that?
No, I think that's terrible advice. I used to be a professional musician.
Mm.
Music is filled with talented, passionate people who are flat broke. So I think actually, I think the reverse is true. I don't think passion leads to success. I think success leads to passion. Once you start making a difference, once you start making those sales, once you see people using your creation and being happy with it, you get passionate about that. That's exciting. You're making progress. So success leads to passion, not the other way around.
Got it. A lot of people find it very difficult to find their passion. How can they find it much more easily?
Oh, that's a great question. All I can say is try a lot of different things. See what
In
works.
what way?
Um, a lot of different jobs. If you're good at one particular skill, try solving different problems with that skill, and something will click. And it might not be what you expect at first.
How long did it take you?
Um, I've done everything from music. I was a writer for magazines. I've been a buyer for trading companies, and I've always kind of enjoyed different parts of it. But I still feel like I'm putting the pieces together in new ways, and that's what's exciting.
A lot of people want to start a business, but they find it difficult. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it's hard. It's just what it is hard. Sales is hard. Rejection is hard. I think one of the biggest disservices that the people that are supporting startups today have sold is this idea that it's supposed to be easy. And these pitch events and these accelerator programs are wonderful. I highly encourage people interested in startups in doing it, but that's not real. That's like a simulation. And once you graduate from that, things get hard, but that's okay. It's supposed to be hard.
How can they overcome those challenges?
A lot of it, I think, is just doing it, being not okay with failure, but resistant to it, and trying the same thing again and again, but also know that at a certain point, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to change my approach. But I think a lot of it's just pure persistence. There are no shortcuts to it.
How do people know whether to persist on or to pivot to a new business here in Japan?
That is an amazing question, and one that I wish I figured out myself. Um, so the classic answer to that for startups is when they run out of money. Um, Founders very rarely will admit like I was wrong. It comes when they run out of money or when they look at their business and they can see that okay, we're going to run out of money really soon. We need to change directions. But it is a rare person that can look at themselves and say, I'm on the wrong path early, and I'm not one of those persons. I make lots of mistakes. I tend to hold on to things and hit my head against the wall longer than I probably should. But the people I know who are good at it are always questioning themselves. Um, they tend to do it quietly. They don't tell the world they're questioning themselves, but they always have this self-doubt and like, is this really the right path? Is this really leading me where I want to go? But it's a valuable skill that I don't think I have.
Right. What are the misconceptions that foreigners have about starting a business in Japan?
How fast they can build it. I think the biggest misconception is people look at the blueprint from San Francisco. They come to Japan, they try to be disruptors, and we're gonna ride in and solve all your problems.
Mm.
And you can do that, but it takes longer. Japanese like a lot more certainty. They ask a lot more detailed questions about what you can do and how long you're gonna be here. And are you really gonna be committed to Japan when times get tough? And people underestimate how difficult that is and how much time it takes to build that trust.
Why is that?
I think it's very rational. Japanese industry is really used to every few years when the markets are good in the US. A bunch of US startups come in and say, we're going to solve your problems. Just buy our software. Yeah, we're here forever. And then when the markets go down, they pull out. So
But
there's,
that's a stigma.
there's a natural and well-deserved skepticism. So you need to be able to prove that you really are committed. You're not going to be one of those.
Tim, you are the number one startup podcaster here in Japan. How were you able to do that?
I think it was just if you do something worthwhile in the same place for long enough, people know about you.
Mm,
But I've been running just disrupting Japan for over 10 years now. It started out with me just talking with my founder friends, which I mean, in some ways it still is.
mm.
Um, but it's just fascinating. I think I just got lucky with the timing, and the Japanese startup ecosystem has really exploded over the last 10 years. And it's just people want to know. It's a fascinating topic.
What were some of the golden nuggets that you received on your own podcast?
Oh wow. That's a great question. Rather than a single piece of advice, I think the most important trend I've seen over the years has been like the first couple years of the podcast, I would always ask people for their origin stories. How did you get into this? And they'd have these stories about how their wife threatened to divorce them for starting a company and how, their parents were against it. And one of my guests was actually homeless when he started his company. Another one uh pawned his wife's jewelry. Wow. Yeah, and he was telling us, like, "Tim, there are some things you should just never do." Um, and that
You've seen it all.
well, they have, yeah, I mean, but that was a different time, and now I don't ask that question anymore because the answer is always like, "Oh, well, my friends and I thought it'd be a really good idea, and our parents were supportive, and we had this advice from the university and this help, and the" it's wonderful. It makes for terrible storytelling. But it's wonderful how much Japanese society has embraced the idea of startups and the idea of innovation, and it's happened really quickly.
You think you contributed to that?
I like to think I've had some small impacts. Well, I know I have had over the years 4 Japanese startup founders who've told me that listening to the guests on Disrupting Japan gave them the courage to start their own show, or start their own companies, and that's kinda awesome. I that makes me happy.
When you look at the startup scene in Japan, what's your take on it?
Oh, wow. That's such a, I don't even know how to get my hands around that question. It's both moving fast and it has a long way to go. So I think if you compare where we are today to where we were 10, 15 years ago, it is unbelievable the progress that's been made. But if you compare where Japan is now to where London is or where the US is, there's a long way to go.
In what way?
The size of the market, the speed at which startups can spin up and execute, the speed at which investors can make decisions, um, the real developing a real focus on solving global problems. There's still not enough Japanese startups that are looking at the rest of the world and saying we've got a problem here that we can solve everywhere.
Mm.
Um, and Japan used to do that. If you look at the companies in the 60s and 70s, these were incredibly disruptive companies across automobiles and cameras and watches and every segment of every industry had Japanese innovation dominating it. And Japan needs to get back to that place.
Why do you think they're not in that place today?
I think things got too easy. The market got too big. The companies got too comfortable working with other Japanese companies, and they started ignoring the signals they were getting from the rest of the world. They stopped really trying to solve global problems and focused on making money in Japan.
Right.
And I think we're starting to change now, but just starting.
How can someone tell if they should stay an employee or start their own business in Japan?
You'll know. Um, you'll know. It's like if you've identified a problem you think you can solve, you don't want to. You will be thinking about that while you're at the office, not thinking about running a startup, but thinking about solving this problem to the point it becomes an obsession. That's the time to start.
How do people get to that point?
I'm not sure. um, for me, it's always just kind of occurred to me. I mean, I know what. Well, I'm wrong about it a lot. I've started a lot of companies that haven't worked out, but it's just when you talk to people about your solution, and they'll answer you and they'll say like, "Oh, that's interesting. You should do that." No, that's you don't have a solution. When you talk to people about your idea and they say, "When can I buy that?" and I'll pay you in advance for it, you're onto something.
You have to pitch it in a certain way in order to get that response?
I don't think so. I think if you've really got that problem solved, or even if you get close to it, people start giving you feedback saying like, "Okay, well, I would pay for that if it did this, or if it was a little bit different." And like, I don't think I've ever built software before I've sold it.
Mm.
Um, I was always like pitching the idea and someone would say, "Well, that'd be great if it only did this." I'm like, "Okay, well, if it did this, would you buy it?" And if the answer is like, "Yeah, great. Let's see if I can get someone else to buy that, and then I'll build it." So, you talk to people. You people will let you know if you're solving a problem for 'em.
What's the biggest advice you would give aspiring entrepreneurs here in Japan?
Solve real problems. Make sure you understand the problem you're solving for who. So know who your customers are, know what their pain is, and know exactly how what you're offering relieves that pain.
Perfect, Tim. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation.